logistic regression we already have seen. Now we are going to discuss ratio, proportion and rate, three related metrics. The ratio expresses the magnitude of one quantity in relation to the magnitude of another without making further assumptions about the two numbers or having them sharing same units. Ratio expresses magnitude of the one quantity in relation to the magnitude of the another quantity without making further assumptions about the two numbers having them sharing same units. A proportion is a particular type of ratio in which all cases in the numerator are included in the denominator. They are often expressed as percents. A proportion is a particular type of ratio in which all cases numerator numerator is included in the denominator. They are often expressed as percents. A rate is a proportion in which the denominator includes measures of time. Prevalence and incidence. Prevalence describes the number of cases that exists in a population in a particular point in time. It is defined the proportion of individuals is in population who have the characteristics at a particular point in time. Incidence requires three elements defined: new cases, population at risk, and time interval. New cases, population at risk, and time interval. Okay. Odds ratio. The odds ratio was developed for use in case control studies. The odds ratio was developed for use in case control studies. Odds ratio is the ratio of odds of exposure for the case group to the odds exposure for the control group. The odds of an event is another way to express a likelihood of an event, similar to probability. The difference is that although probability computed by dividing number of events to total number of trials, odds are calculated by dividing the number of events. Odds probability. One odds probability divided by 1 minus probability. That is probability. Then we have to 1 how much we got probability? So you have to minus. So for probability deduct from 1, then that much value this property. This is the odds. Probability equal to odds 1 plus odds. Okay, the odds ratio is simply the ratio of two odds. The odds ratio is simply the ratio of two odds. Odds ratio, odds 1, odds S1 sampling 1, S2, then equal to probability of 1 minus P1, P2 of 1 minus P2. Physically, what is the meaning? We have to minus P1 from this 1, then how much we are getting, then we have to multiply with P1 like this. P2 also, P2 value to be reduced from, deducted from 1, then how much we are getting, multiply with P2. So odds ratio is P, then what will come? This much. That's why odds 1 divided by odds S2. Odd S1 divided by odd S2. Other topics. Anova, unless of variance. AN of variance VA. Analysis of variance is statistical procedure used to compare the mean values. Compare the means value on some variable between two or more independent groups. On some variable between two or more independent groups. It compare the mean values on some variable between two or more groups. It is called analysis of variance because the procedure involves a partitioning variance, attributing the variance observed in data set to different cause of vectors including group membership. It is called analysis of variance because procedure involves partitioning variance, attributing variance observed in data set to different cause of factors including group members. Group membership. ANOVA is useful technique when analyzing data from designed experiments. ANOVA is a useful technique when analyzing designed experiments. Assumptions of ANOVA assumes independence, normality, and the equality of variance. It is more reliable when the study is balanced. Single sizes are proximal equal. It is more reliable when the study balanced sample size approximately equal. The major test statistics for ANOVA is the F ratio, which can be used to determine whether statistically significant differences exist between groups. One-way ANOVA, the simplest form of ANOVA in which one variable is used to form groups. Compared to variable is called factor. One-way ANOVA with two levels. One-way ANOVA with two levels uh, is equivalent to performing t-test. T-test. The null hypothesis in this type is designed. Design is usually that the two groups have same mention. Factorial ANOVA. ANOVA with more than one grouping variable. Factorial ANOVA. ANOVA with more than one grouping variable or factor. We are often ANOVA with more than one grouping variable, more than one group or factor. We are often interested in the influence of several factors and how they interact. We might be interested in both main effects of each factor and in interaction effects. Factor analysis. Use standardized variables to reduce data sets by using principal component analysis, data reduction, data reduction technique. It is based on orthogonal decomposition and input matrix to yield an output matrix that consists of a set of orthogonal components or factors that maximize the amount of variations in the variables from the input matrix. This process produces a smaller. This process produces smaller, more compact number of output components. Produce a set of eigenvectors and eigenvalues. Process of produces smaller, more compact number of output components. Produce a set of eigenvectors, eigenvalue. The components in the output matrix are a linear combination. The components in the output matrix, linear combination, linear variables. The components are created so the first component maximizes variance captured, and each subsequent component captures as much of the residual variance as possible taking while taking an uncorrelated direction in space. Produce variables that are orthogonal. Non-parametric statistics. Distribution theory statistics make few or no assumptions about underlying distributions of the data. Sign test analog to the one sample test. T-test is used to test whether a sample has hypothesis median. Data values in the sample are classified as plus or minus the hypothesized median. Under the null hypothesis that the sample drawn from popular under the null hypothesis that the sample is drawn from population with a specified median. These classifications have a binomial distribution with pi equal to 0.5 probability of population. Under the hypothesis that the sample drawn from population with a specified